All right, welcome to Soulful Superpowers. I am Kate Marolt, and I'm here with Makenna Johnston, and we are going to be chatting for the next hour around just what does it mean to kind of be a total badass in your life, and how to do it while actually feeling fulfilled and like you have enough energy for it, and what that looks like in terms of really practical things that you can do every day. And we're going to start, Makenna just released her newest book, The Intention Generation. And so we're going to talk about, we're just going to go straight into it. Like we could be like, here's my story, here's why we're doing this. But really we just wanted to have a fun chat. And so our number one like superpower that we both, I know, put a lot into and behind is intention. And McKenna's new book, The Intention Generation, is our first, it's like the first book that I've seen in a long time that actually talks about what intention really is and why it's so important. So I'm gonna actually let her give you a little bit of a background on that. And if you haven't read it yet, go read it. But I would have her give you a little bit there. And we're gonna kind of just go from there and see what shows up in this conversation.
Sounds great. Hi, Kate. Good to see you.
Yay.
So those of you who are here, take a moment to familiarize yourself with the platform before I jump into intentions. You can ask questions. I'm watching our Q&A kind of roll in. We don't really have a chat that we're paying attention to, but we are paying attention to the Q&A. So feel free to ask questions. And I will make sure if they're for Kate that she gets them. And if they're for me, I can just answer them right away. So fantastic. Well, yes, I did just finish my book, and it did just launch on Thursday of last week. It hasn't even been out a week yet. And I was just looking at it, and it's like in the top 100 of the paid books, which is really exciting. And we were joking that I don't have my screenshot to flash around when it was in the free, it was in the top paid. For the like probably hot second, it was number one. Or probably not number one, probably number three, because I just looked at one of my categories and Big Magic was number one. So I probably was somewhere down the pike. But yeah, it just came out, and it's all about setting intentions for your life and how to utilize intentions as a way of being kind of magic.
Totally.
And Kate and I are really big fans of magic, and Kate and I are really big fans of being superhuman, and really big fans of being able to manage the multitudinous awesomeness that comes into your life without exhausting yourself. And a lot of the book is kind of about how intentions differ from the way that most people view intentions. So I talk about intentions. When I talk about intentions, I talk about the really true old school way of looking at intentions. And the example I give is a really antiquated one, but it's so on point. And that is the most common use of intentions were back in the day, or the use of the word intentions was when back in the day, someone would say, my intention is to marry your daughter. Now, back in the day, you didn't go to a father of a daughter or a mother of a daughter and say, my expectation is to marry your daughter. You literally went saying, I really want this, and I need you to meet me halfway and give me the thumbs up. And that's very antiquated because it's so like not feminist and all the things that I believe in. But why it's so powerful is because when we say we want something from the universe actually has to meet us halfway. It doesn't just magically happen. You have to say that you want it and then allow the universe to meet you halfway. And frequently when it doesn't happen that way, it's not really meant to be. And it's not usually because of like lack of desire or lack of work even. Sometimes it is. But frequently it's not. When you've said it's your intention, you do the work, then frequently the universe has to kind of meet you halfway. So that is really what I mean when I talk about intention. It's that, yes, I want it, but that I know there's no guarantee that I will get it, but I have every hope that it'll happen, and I will do all the things to make it possible. And I will prove myself.
This is so beautiful. Sorry, I totally just kind of cut you off, but I got really excited. This is like the key to the difference between making something a superpower to me and having it be what actually runs you into the ground and what makes it feel like maybe a little bit more like your kryptonite of like, I'm always setting intentions, but nothing ever happens. Or it's like, it feels like it's always like the first step. It's that having the desire, not needing to have it be like, okay, this is how this is going to happen. This is by when it's going to happen, and this and this and that. Like how, and then I know for me, like for a long time, and I still do this sometimes, like I'll be like, okay, here's what I want. Here's my intention. And now I have to figure out how to make it happen and take responsibility for the whole thing and like kind of orchestrate and manipulate all of these different things so that I can have it. Otherwise it's not going to work. When what is beautiful is like there actually is that, like there has to be that meeting of halfway. And one of the things that I know we're going to be talking about a lot today is how to start to build up some of that trust. And one of our other favorite superpowers, courage, like how to build that up to the place of, this is my intention. Here's how I'm going to basically have a badass life while not burning myself out. And the balance of having the desire and taking action, but also not having to control everything.
Yes. Yes. We talked. So for those of you who are newer to my world, probably don't know that I'm a ski instructor. Kate knows, all my people know that I do it part-time. We were talking about this at lunch, so it's very salient. So they were saying, well, what are your big plans for your life? And I started laughing. I said, I have lots of plans, but I don't make grasping plans anymore, because when I do, people die. And I was joking, but not really, because every time I make a grasping plan, something huge and dramatic happens. So like, I had this very clear plan that my spouse and I were going to be able to stay in the military. Well, she was going to be able to stay in the military, and I was going to follow her around for the rest of her career. I was like so attached to that being the reality. And then she lost her job. And then I was so attached to the reality that she and I were going to live with my grandmother in Door County the following summer after she lost her job, so attached to it that like I couldn't view any other possibilities. And then my grandmother died and I lost that potential. And so I literally was joking, like, when you hold on to things that you want so tightly they can't breathe, they die, or people die. And that sounds dramatic, but it is commonly what does happen, is that when you have all of that grasping energy and that you're like, this is all I need and I'm going to hold on to it and I'm going to make it happen, and there's nothing other than this that I'm willing to accept, it doesn't have space to breathe. And that's what causes burnout very quickly, right? It's that inability to go with the flow, and it's that hard, tight energy.
Yeah, there's something really powerful in that too. What was just coming to me is a lot of people that I know, and my former self included, for like years and years, is that this idea that being in the magic and being in the flow means that I'm constantly going from like peak experience to peak experience, and like everything feels epic all of the time. Like, oh yeah, like I got this happening and this happening, this happening, and like I feel the universe today, like all this like energy of like, well, I'm awesome, and so everything is working out perfectly. And there's nothing bad about that, but it's also, I've noticed in myself too, like sometimes when things are going really well, it kind of just feels really quiet, and like I don't need to tell everybody about the things that are happening or like the steps that I'm taking, because it's a decision that I've made to keep it in alignment with what's going to sustain me. And frankly, like constantly telling everybody how awesome I am, which sounds hilarious, but like it's kind of exhausting, if that makes sense. And like this, like I feel like there's almost this fear of like, if things go really well, I have to like be really vocal about it. And that sounds hard. So I'm just not gonna go there.
Yes, very. Yeah. And I think this is something that you and I have talked a lot about. The kind of notion that everything has to be light all the time.
Yes.
And that chasing of the light also is a huge cause of burnout, because rather than imagine if you were constantly trying to run away from the night. You were constantly trying to stay away from sundown. You'd have to run really fast, or constantly be in airplanes, or be driving very quickly. It actually would be possible if you were always in an airplane, right? Like moving away from the night, but you would never actually be able to stop and enjoy anything.
Oh man, and think about how much fuel that uses. Yeah. Like literally in an airplane,
literally.
How much fuel that would use.
Yes. And that constant seeking of the light, and only light and light and light and light and love, and not allowing people to say bad things about you, or being bummed when people say less than favorable. I don't want to call it bad, but less than favorable, or how you don't want to be perceived because they're perceiving you from their lens. And like how much energy it takes to run from that darkness, when the reality is that shit happens and there will be darkness. and it's unavoidable, that's a huge source of burnout too, right? And that's part of the grasping energy too. It's that like grasp for the light and then keeping running to stay in it, rather than allowing the shadows to happen. Shadows are inevitable, happens 12 hours a day. We spend half our life in shadow, literally in shadow, literally, we're like in the shadow of the earth from the sun. And we are constantly in our lives running from shadow, even though it probably really should be half the time.
Yeah, and I just keep thinking about conversations that I've had with many of my clients recently about how that fear of having everything going well and like being like what if I'm really strong and solid in my body? What if I feel attractive? What if I have money coming in? What if I'm also like actually really intelligent and I have this thing happening and this thing happening? And it's interesting because that's what's sold to us, right? What's sold to us is like, hey, you can have it all. You can always feel how you want to feel. You can do this and do that. And then there's the other side of it of people coming to me, and I've totally felt this. I still feel this sometimes of like, but what if I'm opening myself up to attacks and judgment? And like, what if, what if it's not like what if I'm in the spotlight and then everybody attacks me? Or what if that's not even the case? What if everybody loves me and then I have to keep up that appearance and expectation forever? Like there's this really interesting thing around admitting that we are really super powerful and that we can be connected to our souls and do that work, and to invite in like almost like the ordinariness of it.
Yes. Being able to accept and love the ordinary and the mundane and not chasing that peak experience, everything being light, and also not allowing everything to be peak, valley, and to love that in between, the liminal phase, the kind of, you know what, in a lot of ways, it is the definition of mediocrity, right? Like, and I think we're afraid of that. And it's interesting that you brought that up because that was coming up for me earlier. I remember when I got married, what my parents said to me was 10% is amazing, 10% is awful, and 80% is somewhere in between. It's not about the awful and the good, it's about the in-between. And that's the hardest part. And I went, what do you mean by that? And it was you wake up, you brush your teeth, you have to go to the bathroom, you have to shower, you have to feed yourself, you have to go to the grocery store, you have to take care of the bills, you have to go to the DMV, and those sorts of ordinary things are what makes a long-term life. Like, that's not what defines your life, but that really is what life is made of in so many ways. And you have the good and the bad, but ultimately it is all the stuff in the in-betweens that makes a life.
Totally.
And that's
like
that's the avoiding the burnout, allowing things to be just kind of there, and to also revel in the highs and be okay with the lows, and be also sad when you feel sad and allowing those feelings to be, but to be comfortable in that kind of like, well, this might not actually be that interesting right now. But that's good. That's recovery. That's the ability to, it's like exercise recovery, right? When you work out at a really high level, you're not supposed to just stop. You're supposed to swim in a pool, and that's kind of normal. And it's just there. So, yes.
Yeah, I'm giggling a little bit over here because we're like, okay, everybody, we're going to get on this call and talk about superpowers and being a badass. And we're like, actually, life is kind of pretty ordinary. But this is where the superpowers come in.
Yes.
Because I can have a day where I wake up, I take a shower, I, take out the trash, I make breakfast, like whatever it is, all of these things. And I can feel grumpy about it. I can feel like, great, another day, or like, man, I wish I were doing something else right now. Or I could have a different intention about it of like, wow, these are the things that are supporting my life. It is these moments of feeling really solid in myself and feeling really like clear and having energy, like while I'm, peeling potatoes or whatever it is.
Yes.
That creates the opening and creates the container to be sustainable when you do have those peak experiences.
Yes. And you can't live your life from a space of courage day in and day out. You would run out of reserves, right? So just, was it 2 days ago? I went to an adventure park very close to my house where they have this huge canyon swing. where I felt like I was being hurtled off a cliff. And then I did an alpine roller coaster. I did all these things. Now, if I did something like that every single day, I would literally run out my reserves of adrenaline and dopamine and all the things that make those peak experiences. So you can't be Superman and fly around the world all the time. Sometimes you just have to be Clark Kent.
Yeah, I mean, even Superman has to land, right?
Yes. And frequently the thing that gives us our power drains us. So like constantly being in superpower mode and seeking those peak experiences is what causes the burnout, because you run out of the ability to produce the chemicals that cause those peak experiences and make you feel like a supercharged human being on this earth.
Yeah, well, and I can speak to that very intimately. Like, I mean, I haven't really actually talked about this too publicly yet, but it's also not a secret that at this time last year, I was in stage 4 adrenal burnout from traveling very unsustainably for 2 years. Like, I loved all the places I got to visit. Like, I was, running my business from anywhere I wanted to. And like, it was,
From my cabin in the woods, from New York, from California,
from Bali, from Chile, like all these places. And I'm going to like be very clear. Like there were many, many amazing points to that. Like I loved that. I had a dream of like traveling long term for about 10 years and that fulfilled that dream. But what I found was toward the end of it, I actually wanted to stop and I was afraid to stop. I wanted to stop because I was tired and I was sick of getting on airplanes. And I was also afraid because I was so used to like bouncing from new place to new country to new retreat to new event, like all of these things all of the time, that the thought of like just stopping and resting was so foreign to me, even though it's like what my body craved so much, that I didn't even know where to go or what to do. And I mean, I think Makenna, I was actually visiting you when I was in like the worst of that, and I was like, I can't even look at my computer. I can't even work. Like the things that I love to do, like work with people's bodies, work with my own body. And I could barely move my body. I was so worn out, but I kept being like, maybe I should go just one more place. Like, no. Like,
yeah, no, you were sitting on my couch in my tiny little mountain cabin. I think it was about this time last year.
It was
March or February, and it was cold. Mm-hmm. And we had this beautiful sunny day, and we worked out outside. And then it got really cold, and then we holed up for 2 days in the cabin. And you were like, I can't do it. I'm done. And I said, oh, you're not done. You're just done for now. And you probably need to be done for now.
Yeah.
And that is the magic, right? It's the living from a space of courage and being willing to do that crazy stuff like travel and to make decisions like jumping out of an airplane and throwing yourself on a canyon swing and take it to a business level, ask for clients, post that you're seeking clients, invite people to like your page, not right after you friend them, that's icky, but you invite friends you've known for a while to like your page, or you email people out of the blue to say, I was just thinking about you and I thought you might be interested in a coaching session. All of those things come from the same place. They come from that I'm scared out of my mind, but fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway. And you have to be able to do that. And then you also have to be able to come back down to earth and go, yeah, staying in one place is pretty A-okay. Brushing my teeth and not doing anything for the next 3 days, but hanging out and chilling with my family, even though it might kind of feel boring at times, is A-okay. Like all of those different states of being are okay.
Yeah.
And important for us as humans to be wildly successful and to have those moments of being able to hurdle our bodies in front of a train and we catch it, right? Like that's what Superman does. But it takes the time of being in the in-betweens to be able to weather that.
Yeah, I always think of like, and I don't like Brene Brown, she talks about it as ordinary courage. It's the ordinary that actually gives us our superpowers. And we just like, I didn't like that for a very long time.
No, of course you didn't. Neither did I.
And like, I still don't necessarily like it, but I've learned to use it and understand it. And that's really the key. It's like when we're in a place of like, I have to figure all of this out. Even if you have solid intentions behind what you're creating, it's like, if you're trying to do it all at once or trying to do it all on your own, or trying to listen to your, if you want to call it your soul voice, or your heart voice, or your body voice, but your brain has been so used to running the show, like there almost has to be a period of just stopping for a little while and like allowing yourself to like, okay, like I'm here. Because a lot of times, and I know I've been totally guilty of this in the past, it's like, oh yeah, okay, my brain's totally like taking over, my ego's taking over, like whatever you want to call it. Like I have all the intellectual stuff there. I'm like, okay, I just have to listen to my heart. I'm like, all right, like let's go, like let's get this going. What do I need to do? Like and there's a balance there of like the superpower of just waiting. It's almost like, like kung fu masters or like martial arts masters they're all so just like grounded and peaceful, and like they can kill you in a second, but they don't but they don't have to, and they're going to try everything else first, but they have that ability. And so there's like a very like peacefulness about it, because they know they have the ability to, in that case, like call on their physical fighting skills, but like if you know that your intentions are solid, you don't have to be constantly thinking about them or holding on to them. If you know that you have those moments of being courageous, and like when you need to take the action, like save those moments so that when it matters, you can just take the action.
Yes. That you just came full circle. That was beautiful.
Thanks.
That was really epic in the full circleness. So let's talk a little bit about creativity.
Yes.
I mean, I know that big magic is like the thing right now. Everybody's talking about creativity. Everybody's talking about how creativity is this kind of nebulous, but now really definable thing. I actually, confession, haven't read Big Magic because I'm writing a book on creativity and I just can't. I feel like if I read it, I'll just like in my brain of creativity, I'll like slit my creativity's wrists and be like, I'm done. I can't do this. So I haven't read it, but I know I've listened to the podcast and I've read a bunch of stuff about it, so I can talk about it intelligently without stopping my own creative process, which, by the way, insulating yourself is sometimes really good.
Yeah, let's like put a little bookmark on that and come back to that, because that feels important.
Yes. Insulating yourself from even when you like, if you have a little FOMO about it, that's cool. I totally have fear of missing out about Big Magic. The minute We're All Artists is written, I will read Big Magic. Actually, no, once it's published, I will read Big Magic and then do my best not to compare myself to Elizabeth Gilbert. But creativity is all the rage right now. We're talking about it. We're redefining how creativity isn't about how beautifully you paint. It's more the process of creation, to do things as a creative individual, creative problem solving, design thinking, art, getting back to like drawing instead of playing video games, and coloring books. Like there's this huge resurgence of creativity. I am doing that personally in my own work with my clients, and also with purchasing Julia Child's house. And if you didn't know I had done that, you can ask questions about it. I don't want to harp on it because I feel like everybody who's here has probably read articles about it. But if you haven't, ask questions in the Q&A box. And like creating creative meals and courageous meals, and there's a lot of interplay there. So just, I guess, go forth and riff on how you think creativity is playing in our world right now and why it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, I like, disclaimer on that, like I have a degree in art and a degree in literature and a degree in language, so like I'm all about the creativity. And it's so important, because to me, having the capacity to be creative, it's not about, composing music or making a drawing or like quote unquote creating beautiful visual things. But creativity, it's a way of being that allows you to find solutions that weren't apparent from the beginning. And that can be a solution to what's for dinner. There's only these crazy items in my refrigerator. I don't know what to do. It can be a solution to how am I going to make ends meet this month? Or how am I going to like plan this epic vacation? Like it could be a solution of like, I don't want to deal with my family, or I love my family and I want to do something great with them. Like all these different things that can come up. But it's really building creative energy. Yes, it can be done through things like painting, through things like writing, and I actually highly encourage both of those things. But it isn't about the output. It's literally like, the way I see creativity is creative energy. It's like the life force energy that runs through us. It's the inspiration that we get walking down the street. It's those mornings when you actually wake up before your alarm and are like, I can't wait for whatever today has to bring me. Like, it's that energy. And if we don't utilize that energy, whether it's like through having a spontaneous dance party or having like a daily journaling practice, or, you know, I know a lot of people who have had kids that, you know, like even like working with kids on their science fair projects, or like, you know, making an art project or something like that. If we don't use that energy in some way, then it like creates like a stopper. Like, it's like you're clogging the sink, like you're clogging this like the pipeline. And so if we don't use it, we don't get to have more of it. It just kind of sits there.
Yes, or it leaves you. That's something that I know. I know that's something that she talks about in Big Magic, because I've listened to some of the podcasts. She talks about meeting someone who's a dear friend of hers and mentor of hers, who literally writes the book she didn't write, and they never talked about it, even though it's the identical book, because she had it. The muse had struck. Elizabeth Gilbert was supposed to write this book, right? Or maybe she wasn't, but like the muse had hit her, and then she ignored the muse. And then about a year and a half later, the muse left and she never wrote the book. And 6 months later, the same book was published by another writer, and they never had a conversation about it. So it's like, when that energy hits you, you got to use it. Otherwise, someone else gets all the fun.
Yeah. And that can be like, it can be ideas like that. It can be like, oh yeah, I had this great idea. I've had that happen so many times where like I don't use the ideas, and then I'm like, oh great, somebody else did it. And it's true. I can't remember if it doesn't matter where this came from, but there's totally this like, yeah, ideas get planted in several different places if they're important.
Yes.
And there's like, just to make sure that they come through and that they happen. And there's something about like, also, I know it's like you can live a creative life without having to like constantly be working on projects and constantly like creating, like making this new thing or doing that new thing, or like, yeah, having ideas and everything. Like, I was just thinking about right now, like my partner and I, we created this terrarium. So we have like all these little succulents and stuff in it, and some spider mites decided that they wanted to come in and live there. And we were like, just like coming up with all these different ways. They're like little bugs that attack household plants and may kill them. And so we were like, what can we do? We were like, well, we could spray them. We could do this, we could do that. I think our current solution is we're going to get a salamander and put it in the terrarium to eat the spider mites. But it's like,
that's creative.
Yeah, like that's like, it's like, how can we look at what's not the only one apparent solution and look at what are the other possibilities? And so that when when things do come up, like if there's something you really want to do or something you really want to experience, and there's all of these reasons that are habitual as to why you can't, that creativity energy, along with the courage that we've been talking about, it can come in and help you be like, well, where are the other solutions beyond these excuses?
We're back to grasping and not grasping. Yes. Like, that really is the epitome of being creative, right? It's the ability to allow things to shift and to see possibility and to make crazily courageous decisions. That's being courageous is creative. Like, doing something against the norm or something that's surprising is the reaction of creativity, right? So yes, and coming back to that space of being able to be in that energy, but without holding on to the expectation that the result is necessary, and then seeing the alternative. If you had created your terrarium, it's like, this will always be like this, and I will never add anything to it, because that's how we do create things in our life. You think I sound dramatic. That's literally how we are. And like, I will never add anything. And then suddenly something goes, and in this case, it was spider mites. And then you go, the spider mites messed up everything. I wanted it to be just like this. Oh, I have to pour poison on this now to kill the spider mites so that it's perfect. I can't add anything else to it because I just wanted it just like this. We're back to grasping energy. But creativity and allowing creativity to come in is like, hey, let's throw in a salamander. Now we have it is still a terrarium, and now it's a terrarium with a reptile in it, or an amphibian. I guess salamanders are amphibians. But yeah, if we actually looked at, so we do that in our life all the time. I will not add a salamander. It's not supposed to have a salamander. But if I were to say to you, well, how about a salamander? And you hadn't come up yourself and you were like, no, my terrarium cannot have a salamander. How ridiculous does that sound? Like, it doesn't matter if it comes from me or comes from you or comes from your partner or comes from an inspiration from the universe. If you treated the way that so many of us treat our lives, treated your terrarium as like your life, and we're like, no salamanders. That might be the hashtag for this. No salamanders. I bet I could write a book called No Salamanders. But there's so many books.
Done.
It's done. But if you viewed your life like that terrarium, like viewed your terrarium the way you viewed your life, and we were so rigid and didn't allow creative ways to think, and we grasped onto what we expected to be the outcome, rather than the intention, and the intention to have a terrarium is like having a nice thing to look at that I created with my partner, and isn't that pleasant? Which is really what our life should look like, rather than it's X, Y, and Z, right? You would think, we would think you were crazy. Well, you would all think you were crazy. Even yourself would be like, why am I being so crazy about the fact that I don't want a salamander? And there's something about that. It's a really nice little thread through this, because if we viewed our lives that way and we were that grasping, we don't think we're crazy. Crazy is the wrong word. That's a misuse. We don't think that it's it's not a big deal, right? Mm-hmm. But if we were to look at it as an object, and then we have that much attachment and grasping to the expected outcome, we totally go, hey, you sound ridiculous. But if we can view our life that same way, like it's not meant to be what we expect it to be.
And I was just thinking about that too, like even going all the way back to intentions with that. It's like our intentions like tend to not be super specific, in the sense of like our desire and our intention was to add more plant life into our apartment.
Yes.
And like to have something beautiful.
Yeah.
And that can happen. Like a lot of times we start with something like that, right? We start with something like, ooh, like I want to go on a trip to Europe, or like I want to create some plant art, or like I think it's time for me. Like even like right now, I'm considering, this is totally new information. World, you're welcome. And it's not really relevant, but it feels relevant to me. I'm considering not being a redhead anymore, because I've dyed my hair red for like 10 plus years, and I don't know, just like for fun. But all of these things can have these trails. It starts off like, what else is possible? Like, what else could I do? Like, ooh, I want to go to Europe. But then like you start looking at plane tickets, you're like, I don't know. Or like, wow, this might be complicated. Or like, I can't, like, I want to go to this country, and I want to do it this, and I want to do it on these days. And it can be really easy to be like, oh, that's not going to work. And then maybe it's like, actually, well, if I go to this country first and I leave 2 weeks earlier and come back a week earlier, like plane tickets half off of what I thought it was going to be. Like I get this whole different adventure. Like plant art, like this thing that like the terrarium, it was like, it could be that. And then it was like, no, like the rocks and the moss and everything has to be put exactly the certain way. There's no room for that salamander. It's like, actually, who knows what we can do when we just like have the intention, take the first step, and then like that's where like the creativity comes in. Like play with it. What's going to be fun for you?
Yes.
In all things. Like actually, I have a great example of this. A friend of mine I was just chatting with this weekend, who he owns his own business, and he decided to start, like he was like, I want to start volunteering at this place, and the volunteer position happened to be a paid position. And he was like, yeah, I make like $12 an hour, but it's something I do for free anyway. That right there, I know plenty of people who have their own businesses who would never admit to having a job that would only get paid $12 an hour. I know you're one of them, Makenna.
Hey, 13 now. I've made it to 13 days pay. I started at 10.50. I'm at 13.
Yeah, and there's something, it's so funny how we have that. And what's fascinating about it is now, after working there for about 4 months, he's volunteering at a nonprofit. He has his own nonprofit that he's kind of put on the back burner for a while, as he's like figured some other stuff out in his life. They brought in a new director who's a brilliant fundraiser, and as soon as they met, she was like, I want to make your nonprofit global. And she has a history of raising like billions of dollars for other nonprofits. Maybe it's millions. I don't really know. Probably millions. It's a nonprofit after all. But the point is, if he had that like really strong urge of like, I want to volunteer, and this job sounds like fun, like it felt really good for him, he had to set aside the like, what will people think of me if they know that I have a part-time job? Or like, what will they think of me if I only get paid this much per hour? What will they think of me? This has nothing to do with my business. Like all of that stuff.
Totally. But that's the idea, right? Like when things come in that seem out of the ordinary or seem like something you shouldn't do, or you're like, well, maybe I shouldn't, what will people think of me? and you do it anyway. That comes back to courage, right? Mm-hmm. And then also it comes back to the muse because it's creative thinking. Like the reason why I started teaching skiing, I thought, well, that's an interesting way to get paid to market rather than paying to market. Like accessing my ideal client, especially for the Julia Child House and even some coaching clients, to be frank. That was really interesting. It's like, well, that's a creative way to get paid. Even if I'm only getting paid $13 an hour, I'm not hemorrhaging anything out into advertising. I'm connecting with people.
Yeah, and a lot of times,
so that comes back to creativity, and that, yes. Go ahead.
And it's just funny because like a lot of times what happens is like we'll set it like a clear thing, like this is what I want. Here's what I want. Here's why. Here's my intention behind it. Like I'm going to take action. I'm willing to have steps, and then things will come in. You know, the universe or whatever.
Hey, the universe will go, here's this thing, and you go, maybe not, right?
Yeah, and they're like, great, let's find the fastest path for you to get there. Yeah, exactly. And the first, like the thing that you're given might not be that's not a logical next step. Well, when things are happening very quickly, they tend to not be very logical. And so the whole thing about like actually using your superpowers is to like bypass that logic, because let's be serious, X-ray vision is not logical, but it's possible. I'm really hoping someday. Not because that's creepy, just because it'd be fun.
Yeah, right. Okay. I'm just kidding. No, but totally. And I think that this happens with my clients all the time, right? They'll call me and go, I have this opportunity. It's totally illogical. I totally shouldn't do it. And I go, wait, why not? But it's not on my trajectory, but how do you know? Like,
yeah.
I wrote about this in my book, and it came about when I was on the phone with a client looking at the mountain behind my house. It's like right over here. And I looked at it and I took a picture of it and sent it to her. And I said, here's the deal. You're at the bottom of the mountain. You're trying to get to the top. You know where you're going. There are literally thousands of ways to get up. You can circle the one tree 1,000,000 times. You can go through this tree. You can go around and down and up and through. And it's all on the same mountain. How do you know it's not the right step? Until you make it and then change your mind. And frequently going back is not logical. This happens when I'm looking for paths to put people on skiing. Sometimes we like kind of backtrack so that we stay on a flatter place because they're not quite at the level to turn nicely on the incline, and they think I'm crazy until they've done it.
Yeah.
You have no idea what you're looking at because there's these trees in the way if you're looking at a mountain until you've actually climbed up there and go, oh, I actually have to backtrack because there's this huge boulder in the way. And it might feel like a backtrack, but it's not. It's the only way through. And frequently it's not logical. Buying Julia Child's house did not feel logical at the time. Writing a book didn't feel logical at the time, especially on the topic of intention, which I had literally never spoken about like directly in my business.
Yeah.
Taking a ski job did not feel logical. Flying to New York 6 times last year did not feel logical. All of those decisions hit me and we're kind of like, hey, those feel good. Is good enough? But what if my clients think it's weird that I have a part-time job? The same thing, like, right? But those opportunities happen for a reason. And some you should say no to because they're not the right things. But that's a thing that comes from finding your superpowers of knowing what's right and what's wrong from a perspective of what feels good rather than what feels logical.
And this is the key to that fulfillment piece that we were talking about of like not, it goes beyond like not getting burned out or overwhelmed, but it's like, how do you feel consistently energized and inspired? How do you feel like fulfilled with the ordinary, kind of what we were talking about earlier? And it's like, it's by doing this, it's having that, it's being willing to play with discernment and not having to always get it right.
Yes. You will fuck up your discernment.
Totally.
You will totally think, God, this really illogical thing. It's exactly what Kate and Makenna were talking about. And it sounds really great. And I think it feels really good. I'm going to interpret the flutter in my chest as good. And then you do it for a week and go, oh, no. That flutter in my chest was terror. Because terror and good sometimes feel very similar.
Yeah.
And I completely misinterpreted it, and now everything is awful, and now I'm stuck. It's like, no, you're never stuck. You can always quit. You can always change direction. You can always, and it will happen. Expect it to happen. We don't expect it to happen. Actually, yes, expect it to happen a bit once or twice over the course of while you're practicing discernment. It will happen. Discernment is a superpower, and it is not a finely tuned one when you first start playing with it, because discernment is the magic between this is totally illogical, but I'm going to do it anyway because it feels good, versus this is totally illogical and it's a horrible idea, but I'm going to do it because I think it's a good idea. It's like figuring out which one it actually falls into is so small. It's like barely noticeable when you're practicing it at a new place. And once you've been doing it for a while, it's like, oh yeah, totally. This is a total no.
Yeah. There's another thing with that too, about like, you could make a decision and it's a total yes. And then 2 months later, like, especially in terms of, at least for me, this is like my realm of understanding, like of comfort around this, because I travel so much, is like, I can make a decision to go to an event and be like, yep, this is happening. And then like a week beforehand be like, oh, actually no. Whereas like, it was totally right at that time. And then the things that have happened since were like, actually, no, now it's no longer relevant. And there's courage in trusting that.
Yes. So that's a great segue. About a year and a half ago, you and I talked about doing a retreat together, right? It was ages ago.
Yes.
And it was actually going to be a mastermind, a bunch of retreats, and it was going to be amazing. And there was a lot of hell yes. And then a few weeks later, there was like this creeping in of no for both of us. And then we both said, yeah, but sometime. And then like a year passed. Yeah. Over a year passed, because I was living in Door County with my grandmother when we came up with mastermind idea number 1. So a year passes, and we see each other in New York in August and go, we should totally do a retreat together. Not a mastermind, but a retreat. And it's going to be a retreat in Mexico. And it's going to be this time in this place. And it's totally going to happen. And it's a hell yes. And then we had a bunch of interest. And then we both went, yeah, no.
Yeah. We're like, this is crazy. This is not the right time.
No, it was totally the wrong time for both of us. Even though it was beautiful, we loved the venue, everything felt. And when we thought about it back in August, it was like, yeah, let's do this. And then, so that was back in October when we were like, nope, just kidding. We announced it, a lot of interest, almost took payments, and then went, yeah, joking. Just kidding. Which, by the way, sometimes discernment looks like flakiness. It's frequently not. It would have been flaky if we'd had people sign up that were really excited and had paid, and then we didn't give them back their money. That
would be flaky, yeah.
Flaky and jerky. And then sometime back in December, it's like about when the retreat should have happened, right? It should have happened. Mm-hmm. We said, hey, do you want to do a retreat? And then it was this like, hell yes. And then everything just kind of happened. And that was really fun. There was nothing that felt hard about the process. And we announced it. It's called Providence in Provence. And it's a retreat at Julia Child's house. And it's all about courage and creativity and all of that. We announced it and immediately got a sign up. And it was like, yes! Like I'm talking within 30 seconds. This was so fast from someone neither of us had a personal connection to, like directly. It was like through a friend of 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 a client. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I met someone through my cousin's mother's brother's sister's child's niece. Like it was one of those. And then we went, oh, we got it. We hit it. We found it.
And there's something there about both knowing timing and also persistence. Like there was never a question that it was going to happen. We were like, oh yeah, we're totally going to do something together at some point. But we were okay with when it was a not now, and then continue to be like, kind of check in and be like, is it now? Is it now?
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey. Hey, Kate.
Yeah. And there's something really cool about that. Again, it's like that release of the grasping, the release of having to have it go a certain way. And that is like that's such, I think it's always going to come back to that, because that's the key of all the keys.
So let me tie some things into neat little bows, right? We knew we wanted to do a retreat together. That was our intention. If we had gone in with our expectation is we're going to do this mastermind, I expect you that you're in because you said you're in, I'm in, we're in. Mm-hmm. Let's do this mastermind. What would have happened? It probably would have sold a couple spots because it was epic, but only because of its epicness, not because the energy was any good. And then we would have gotten into it and started resenting each other and been miserable. And then the people who were in it would have been miserable. And then suddenly it would have been this cluster of doom. Like,
yes, and I've had this happen in other areas that weren't business related. We're like not friends with those people anymore. We're like, we're so attached to something that it doesn't
yes,
always work out. And all of this just to say, like, this could be anything, right? Like, this could be your relationship. It could be like a work relationship. It could be an idea that you have. Like, it could be anything. Like, all of these things, they all tie into that. When is it the right time? And there's that balance between knowing if it's a yes or a no, and is this the time that I need to draw on my courage to make it happen?
yep.
Or is this a time to allow like the energy to sort of play in and out?
Yes. So we could have been courageous and done it and grasped. That would have come from a place of expectation, right? And I talk about this a lot in the intention generation. The difference between intention and expectation is actually not that different in theory, but in practice it actually is. And when you read the definition of it in the dictionary, it's kind of like, when you actually like dig down into what the meanings of the words are, they're dramatically different. So we've just bastardized the word intention, really. So we could have gone in with all of that and had all that grasping energy and had the courage to do it. We felt creative while doing it. Those are all of our superpowers that we believe in. And it still could have been a horrible disaster. It also could have been fine. Who knows? We didn't do it. But it could have been a horrible disaster no matter how like in our superpowers we were, because to utilize your superpowers effectively requires discernment too. You can't just puke your superpowers all over the world. The world doesn't respond very well to that. It requires
or like post them on Instagram all the time and rather than actually just taking care of yourself.
Click hashtag courageous, click hashtag creative, click hashtag intention. Yeah, right? Like,
which PS I totally do.
I have done it too. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that's all you're doing, that's a problem. So we took a lot of time and discernment to then wait for another opportunity. And then it happened. We could have done the same thing, but we found the discernment. But here's the thing that's so magic about it. The intention always was, let's do something together. Not, let's do something together that's 5 days long in this resort in Mexico with these types of people. That would be an expectation, right? Like that is literally the definition of an expectation. Kate, I expect you and I to do something together with 5 people at this resort in Mexico this date. Are you in? It doesn't even feel good. I mean, saying it sounds awful. I can't even say it with anything other than gritted teeth. Yeah. And that's really when we got to the point where we are now, this retreat that's happening in May. What is the date? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the 22nd, I think. Yeah, 22nd to 27th.
Yeah, May 22nd
know those things.
to 27th. Yeah, I should know that off the top of my head. Oops. I intended to, sorry. Just didn't happen. When it finally came to fruition that like, let's do this, everything kind of just fell into place. We wrote the copy together. We made the website together. We sold a spot and then started selling them all. That kind of just started trickling in. And that's the magic of being able to like allow yourself to be in the lull, because we had the rush and then we had this like period of lull. It's like, now I'm just buying. Oh crap, that's scary. And then it's like, oh, now everything's hunky-dory again. So allowing yourself to find those lulls and to be in that place and to utilize your superpowers with discernment and be in the flow. I think there were both times when we were both disappointed it didn't happen, or one of us was more so than the other, but that's kind of normal too. Like, and it wasn't disappointment like, I'm so disappointed in you, or I'm disappointed in myself. It was more like, well, that would have been fun. It just didn't work out. And that is something that's so magic about following from that place of discernment and being in your superpowers and also being in the lulls and not burning out. You're able to create from a place of flow and a place of connection to your source, whatever your source is, you individual watching this.
For whatever reason, it's feeling really important right now. This is kind of like a random segue, but so it's not really a segue, but it's really important to talk about avoiding and avoidance right now. It feels important to bring that up. And because like we were talking about timing of things, right? And so it's like, so when it comes to a creative project or something that you like want to take action on, whatever it is you have going on, there can be tendencies to avoid. And sometimes the avoidance or procrastination is actually a sign of like, oh, like this isn't supposed to happen right now, which happened with both of us when we were like avoiding writing website copy or like avoiding actually signing contracts with the venue and all this stuff, which is not something that either of us normally have a problem with. And so if it was like a pattern, that would be one thing. But that's kind of how you know, like you can check in if you're avoiding something or procrastinating something. Like, is it avoidance because it's scary and you don't know the outcome, or is it avoidance just because like you just don't really want to do it? And
or it just doesn't feel good anymore, or like that comes from grasping too, right? Frequently when we notice that we're avoiding something, we blame ourselves. I'm avoiding writing my book because like I'm not good enough and I'm afraid I won't finish it. Or are you actually avoiding it because it's not supposed to be written anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Do you actually want to be a published author, or have you just been sold to the idea that being a published author is important to you in your career? Do you actually want to have an online e-course? This happens all the time with my clients, all the time. I want to create an online e-course because I want $1 million a year in passive income. I want to be the next Kimber Lunar, Marie Forleo, Natalie McNeil, blah, 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 blah. I want it. And then I go, why? And they say, because I just want it. Okay. And I don't generally push because usually that happens in the first few calls. And then I'll say, okay, so you should start writing that e-course in the next few weeks. Here are the 3 things you should do. And then they don't do it. And I try to hold them accountable to it. And then I go, so tell me what you actually want. Well, I definitely want at least $150K a year. Oh, that's not $1 million. They're like it hits them, right? So they've avoided it because it has nothing to do with what they actually want. And it is so far off base from what they actually want, because what they actually want is to talk to people one-on-one and do live events. And they want a heck of a lot less money, and they want to do a heck of a lot less work than they thought they did. So they've been avoiding it. And then sometimes they actually do want it and they avoid it because they're scared they won't get it. And then that's a different coaching process, right? But you do have to watch which one it is and figure it out and be really honest with yourself. Are you avoiding it because you literally don't want it? And that happens just as often as you're avoiding it because you want it so much.
Yeah. And that and this process takes practice. Like it's going to be a little different for everybody. So it can't just be like, look for this sign. This is how you'll know if you're avoiding something because of this, because it's going to be a little different for everybody. But it always comes down to this. And I say this to my clients all the time, like, you might not want to admit it to yourself, or it might be like, it might suck to know because you've been trying to hide from it for so long, but like, you always know if like why you might be avoiding or procrastinating something. If you give yourself the time to pause, breathe, and check in and ask yourself, what's this about? And it's like, that's so key. And sometimes it's little tweaks you have to make to stuff. Sometimes it's like, it's an adjustment. Sometimes it's a throwing it out. Sometimes it's oh, this needs to totally pivot and change directions. Or sometimes it is like just a not now. And sometimes it is that like, wow, I just need to sit down and fucking do this because I want it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I will do anything to make it happen. Yes. Like it's like there's a balance there.
Totally. If you guys have any questions, I haven't seen very many come through the pike. I think we've answered some of them.
Answered most of them, yeah.
Yeah.
We do, we have like about like 5, maybe 10 minutes left. So if you do have a question about anything we've talked about, please feel free to ask us now. We don't want to miss your questions. Mm-hmm. And I know I've seen a couple of people pop in and out too. So if you're watching this later and you want to post a question in like on my YouTube page or wherever it is, like I'll see it.
Event page on Facebook, the Bliss Brigade, because Kate it's one of the few Facebook groups you're still in, I think.
Yeah.
Yep. I still am able to tag her. Yes. So I think we'll take the last 5-ish minutes to actually talk about the retreat.
Yeah, cool.
I think we have 4 spots left. I'd have to look. It might be, I think it's 4. And maybe it's 5. How many is it, Kate? Do you know?
I actually don't.
Okay. I was like, we should know this. These are again, Kate and I are really good at being in flow and not worrying about, not stressing about nitpicky details. Like, is it going to sell? It's like, yes, it will. It'll sell. And the more that we grasp on, this has happened to us before. We've like kind of thought about doing things together. It's like, I was still going through this huge phase of grasping and Kate was like, it'll be fine. And I was going, it will not be fine. It will all be awful. And I've shifted away from that a lot in the past year because it's all fine. So that's one of the things that we talk a lot about. But this retreat is really an immersive experience about creativity and courage. And there will be lots of painting. We have like purposely have all these huge amounts of paint and huge amounts of canvas where you can just paint the most beautiful thing you've ever created, or just literally like paint vomit on the canvas, and we will definitely not judge it. You can take the fluorescent yellow 5-ounce package and squeeze it onto it and like smear it around with your hands, and I'll go, cool. I'm glad you're moved that way. So there'll be no like, oh, you can't use this. You can't. That's happened to a lot of art retreats I have been to. It's like, can you just be a little bit more judicious with your use of the materials and in the spirit? Like, none of that. This is like, you can pretend you're in kindergarten again. There's going to be silk with silk paints, and there's going to be canvas with acrylics, and there's going to be watercolors, and there's going to be throwing omelets around. And I hope you just throw it and it hits the ceiling, because that gives me an excuse to stand on a chair and clean it off and say, literally, someone was so excited to flip their omelet, they threw it on the ceiling. There will be trips to Grasse, which is like the most gorgeous place. All the flower, you don't know, I haven't told you this yet. All of the roses are in bloom when we're there.
Yay.
Also,
I love that you led off talking about this retreat by being like, you can splat all the paint onto your canvas. Can we just change the tagline to that? Like,
use all the paint, and it can be ugly. I don't care if it becomes a black mess, just enjoy it. Oh, and there's going to be Tibetan bowl painting. Like, I think I told you about this, where we're going to put paint into my Tibetan bowls. I'm a Tibetan bowl healer, and I will ring them, or you can ring them, and it'll just like splash everywhere. You'll have paint on your face and paint on your clothes. If you don't want to get messy, this is not the retreat for you. I'm going to be so blunt.
Yeah.
Like, I hope that my grass in the front of the house is so crazily colored by the end of this. And it really is about just doing things and not questioning it, and then having the time at the end of the day to integrate, talk about it, get some coaching, do some yoga, drop all that back in.
Like, my favorite thing about the way that both of us work and the way that I know that we run our events and retreats is it's less about having workshops and specific goals, and more about how do we live it, and how much magic can we create when we're kind of just hanging out. And like, yes, there will be yoga. Yes, there will be Tibetan bowls. Yes, there will be painting. Yes, there will be cooking classes. And like, yes, there's just going to be chill time, and like how to live. It's a retreat in the sense that you are coming to a place, being in an environment very intentionally to cultivate your courage and your creativity. And it's how can we be out in the world living this throughout this week together in a supportive container, so that when you go back, go back to your life, it's not like, well, that was completely different than normal. It's like, how do we create all of that together? Like, you can find just as much creativity chilling and hanging with a glass of wine as you can, like, doing handstands against whatever, like, it doesn't really matter. There's so many possibilities there. And I don't know, I'm really excited about this, because there's
a lot
of magic here.
It's probably going to be the most fun thing we've ever done. Like, honestly, I don't even care if any of you show up. I mean, I would love to see you there, but Kate and I could do this for 5 days, just the two of us, and no one would ever see it, and it would just be just as fun. And I would so rather share it with you, because Kate and I play together all the time, and we don't frequently get to invite other people in because we live in different places. And that means that frequently it's all behind closed doors, or via Skype, or via late night conversations. And this is a really unique opportunity, and it's ridiculously affordable. Let's be really clear. For a retreat, it's ridiculously affordable. It's pretty much all inclusive. The 22nd to the 27th, there'll be so many different opportunities. There's a pool. And if you haven't looked at the website yet, please do. It's at providenceprovence.strikingly.com. providenceprovence.strikingly.com. And we'll post that in the group too. It'll be in the Bliss Brigade tomorrow. That's my post for tomorrow. We'll post it in the event. Has the pictures of the house. Julia Child's house is literally the most beautiful place. It's just so beautiful. It's so cute. It's so small. It's so accessible. It's not this huge mansion. It's really about like intimacy and closeness and art and creation. Like, she created it that way. And that energy is just like oozing out of the stucco walls. It's crazy. And everything's just going to be in full bloom. So it's going to be really easy to feel, I would say, open to the receiving of the muse and the ideas and the connection to your divine source. And even if we don't do anything like meditative, there'll be yoga, but like maybe we don't do anything super meditative because it's just not how you jive and how the group wants. It's really not going to make a difference. You're going to kind of be in that state anyway. And that's what everybody who's ever been to the property says. Like, it's just magic that way. It's on a hillside in France. I mean, come on. From 3 acres of wooded terraced gardens, you literally have so many places to get you like marvelously lost. It's fantastic.
There's just so many ways to explore all of these different superpowers, whether it's in our bodies, whether it's through creating art or writing or talking or food. Like, we just want to find all of the ways that we can to bring in different avenues for you to explore your superpowers in a really grounded, like not super intense sort of way.
Yep. And because neither Kate nor I love to be super salesy, you can check it out. You can see the pricing there. We have payment plans. Like, I'm not going to go, it's 3 easy payments of blah, blah. Like, if you're interested, you can seek it out. We'd love.
And please, like, feel free to reach out to us too. Like, if you have questions or you're not sure, like, about money or whatever it is, like, we're both also kind of rock stars at creating money out of nowhere, and would be happy to like to find a way to support you. If this is important to you, like, at least just let us know so that we have the know and we can start to support you right now.
Yeah, and we did get one question about something I said. You said be able to create from your sense of flow and X. What was the second word you used? I think it was sense of flow and connection. That's usually how you talk about it, but it could have been anything. But I think that is what I said. Yeah. But the weather is supposed to be marvelous. You will be the first, if you come, if you care about this sort of stuff, you'll be the first yoga retreat. I'm doing like a personal retreat with my one-on-one clients before that. But other than that, you will be the first retreat to get to attend. You'll get to take pictures. They didn't used to let you take pictures of the house, the person who owned it before. I'm going to be like, take all the pictures, post them all over the internet, show how beautiful this space is. So like, maybe we'll play with photography and bring in some cameras and some microphones. And so maybe they'll be singing and podcasting. I got a Shruti box that's coming. The size of my suitcase is going to have to be extraordinary. Luckily, I have this suitcase about this big that's R2-D2, and it looks like I'm moving R2-D2 around the airport.
This is one of the thousands of reasons why I love you. You have an R2-D2 suitcase.
It literally looks like I'm pushing R2-D2 through the airport.
Yeah,
it's the best.
That's amazing.
So yes, we'll stick around. If any other questions trickle in, feel free to ask questions about the retreat. Feel free to pop into the Bliss Brigade, which is bit.ly/the Bliss Brigade, and ask any questions there. You can email me at hello@MakennaJohnston.com, and you can email Kate at
Kate@KateMarolt.com.
Kate@KateMarolt.com. Beep, boop, boop, boop. Yeah. And we will post the recording. So if you want to watch it again or you want to share it, it'll be there. I'm going to post it all over the place. I think it'll go actually as a bonus video for my book too. My book is no longer free, but if you want to download it, it's $2.99. There's lots of reviews coming in, so you can now have like a little awareness of what you're buying rather than like, it's a book and it's there. Like it's kind of nice to start seeing the reviews trickle in.
Yeah, that's pretty much all we had. I know we could talk about this literally for like the next 7 hours, but that would be ridiculously long hangouts on air recording.
Well, if you did that, I would start to get wild and be like,
I would definitely like grab a bottle of wine if we were going to continue for 7 hours.
Let's do that sometime. Let's do an all-day Kate and Mac drink wine and talk about shit day, and people can just show up like they're in our living room. Or we can just do that in person and nobody else can join. Or they can join too, because that's basically what our life is like.
That's basically going to be the 5 days that we're in France. Or 6 days.
There will be wine.
It's 6 days,
there will be so much rosé. I don't even know. Like, Provençal rosé is like, oh, there's not a better example of rosé out there, and we'll have so much of that. We should have a master somm like doing our wine picking for us. That's fun. Yeah, that's exciting. And it's shared lodging, twin beds, and literally, please look at the website, look at the room. This is so uncalled for, like not uncalled for, so uncommon in France that like the rooms have access to the outside and patio and can you tell I'm excited about the house?
I'm excited.
I would love to just move into it, but unfortunately it's a business and I can't live there. So, but you can come live there for a few days. I don't even get to stay in those rooms normally. So you get an experience I don't get because I live in the guest house. So. Awesome. Well, I think we can sign off. I'm not seeing anything else trickle in. I think we answered everything either directly or indirectly. Fantastic. Kate, it's always good to see your face.
You too. It's so fun. And
I wish I had an excuse to, like, maybe we should do a weekly show, except neither of us have the schedule that actually works. But in theory, that's a great idea, and in practice, it's a horrible idea. But
that's another one of those things that we would get really excited about and be like, yeah, no. I'll close on that. If anything feels like it's more pressure than it is fun, it's probably not the right thing.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's and I'm out. Yeah. Yes. Mic drop. I wish I had my inflatable mics. I have a couple inflatable mics that sometimes when I'm coaching, I talk into and then drop when I've said something really good. Yeah, I'm that nerdy. It's cool. It's like my personal. Nobody else knows it's happening. Hey, clients, I just told you something that you don't know I do.
That's amazing.
Mic drop.
On so many levels.
Yeah.
All right.
Love you. And all the questions are welcome. We got it.
Yes.
All the way in Colorado.
Yes.
Now, those of you who have been sitting here for almost an hour watching this, go outside and do something fun. Go get some fresh air. Sit with it. If it really hits you like you have to be here, talk to us. We'd love to make it possible for you. And we will see you, hopefully a few of you, in Provence. Seriously, we're going to Provence, Kate. We're going to be in Provence. And it's been what, like 2 months? 2.5 months.
2.5 months, yeah.
Sipping rosé by the pool at Julia Child's house. Real talk.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Excellent.
Bye, my dear.
Goodbye. Goodbye, everyone. See you soon.